I still remember the exact moment my world cracked in half. It wasn't a gradual realization or a slow build of suspicion. It was sudden, violent, like a punch to the gut. I was supposed to be on a business trip, but I'd finished the meetings earlier than expected and decided to surprise her. I bought flowers on the way, something simple, roses, her favorite, and headed home with a smile on my face, imagining how excited she'd be to see me earlier than planned. The front door was unlocked. That was my first clue, though I didn't register it immediately. It should have been locked. She was careful like that. I pushed it open, still holding on to my optimism, but a sense of unease crept over me as I stepped inside. There was something off. I couldn't hear the TV. The lights were on, but the house was too quiet. I frowned, but I shrugged it off. Maybe she was in the shower or in the back room doing some work. As I walked through the house, I was already reaching for my phone to send her a text when I heard it. Muffled voices. My first thought was that she had a friend over, maybe a neighbor, but there was something about the tone of those voices that made my skin prickle. I couldn't make out what was being said, but the sound of them, their intimacy, raised the hairs on my neck. I should have stopped right there. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I kept walking, slow and deliberate, toward our bedroom. The door was ajar, just enough for me to hear everything without being seen. My heart was racing now, and a part of me was screaming not to look. But I couldn't stop myself. I stepped forward, the angle widening until I saw them. Her. On top of him. Time stopped. For a moment, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. The woman I had spent years loving, trusting, was on top of another man. Her hands were gripping his shoulders, her body moving in ways I had memorized as my own. I could hear their breathy moans, the murmured whispers between them. It was a nightmare playing out in front of my eyes, and I was paralyzed. My chest felt tight. The flowers dropped from my hand, the petals scattering across the floor in slow motion. They didn't even notice. My vision blurred with rage and betrayal, but even in that moment of shock, something else took over. A clarity, a coldness. I didn't yell. I didn't storm in and confront them like I thought I would. Instead, I pulled out my phone, hit the record button, and started a live stream. I had no idea what I was doing. It wasn't something I had planned or thought through. It was pure instinct, driven by the raw, savage need for justice. Or maybe revenge. All I knew was that this moment, this betrayal, needed to be seen. It couldn't be hidden, couldn't be swept under the rug with empty apologies and pathetic excuses. The live stream started instantly. My hands were shaking as I filmed through the small crack in the door, trying to steady the camera. They were too lost in each other to notice. For a few seconds, I just stood there, letting the phone capture everything. My breath came in shallow gasps, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. But outwardly, I was still. Frozen in shock, yet functioning on some primal level. I watched the screen of my phone as the number of viewers began to climb. 5 viewers, 12 viewers, 47 viewers. It kept growing. It didn't take long before the comments started flooding in. Is this real? OMG, is that his wife? Bro, you better stop this. Confront them. I ignored the comments, barely seeing them as my gaze remained fixed on the scene in front of me. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a dull, throbbing pain deep in my chest. This was the woman I had planned to spend my life with, and here she was, betraying everything we had built. And the worst part? They were laughing. Between their breathless gasps and moans, they were laughing, as if this was some kind of game, as if their betrayal was just another thrill in a series of meaningless encounters. My fists clenched, the urge to storm in and tear him off of her boiling under the surface. But I held back, because now it was more than just me. The world was watching. 87 viewers, 139 viewers, 231 viewers. The numbers kept rising. People were sharing it, the link spreading across platforms like wildfire. Every second, more eyes tuned in to witness the destruction of my life. She had no idea. After a few minutes that felt like an eternity, I finally moved. Slowly, I pushed the door open further. The sound must have startled them because she froze, turning her head sharply. The smile that had been on her face vanished instantly when she saw me. For a moment, there was only silence, a suffocating stillness as our eyes met. Hers were wide, filled with a mixture of shock and guilt, like a deer caught in headlights. His reaction was delayed, a confused frown as he followed her gaze to where I stood, phone in hand, recording everything. "Jared," she started, scrambling off the bed, pulling the sheet around her body. "It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" My voice was cold, steady, but inside I was breaking. "You're on top of him, Emily. What else could it be?" He scrambled to get dressed, muttering something incoherent under his breath as he fumbled with his pants. She stood there, clutching the sheet to her chest, her face pale, tears already starting to form in her eyes. But I wasn't looking at her anymore. My eyes were on the phone, on the screen where hundreds of people were now watching the fallout. 346 viewers. The comments were coming in fast now, too fast to read, but I caught glimpses. "She's crying now? Really? What did she expect? Man, that's rough. Expose her. Jared, please." She started again, taking a hesitant step toward me. "Can we talk? Just put the phone down, and let's talk." "I can explain." I laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound that didn't feel like mine. "Explain? You think there's an explanation for this?" She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was done listening to her lies. Instead, I turned the phone around, showing her the screen for the first time. Her face crumpled as she saw the viewer count, saw the comments scrolling past at lightning speed. "You're live?" I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone's watching." Her eyes went wide, panic flooding her features. "No, Jared, no, please." But it was too late. For a moment, she just stood there, frozen, her mouth hanging open as her brain scrambled to catch up with reality. The reality that the world, our world, was unraveling in real time, and there was no stopping it. Her face paled as she stared at the phone in my hand, the numbers ticking up on the screen. 500 viewers, 726 viewers, 1,052 viewers. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "Jared, please, don't do this. We can fix this. We can talk about it. Just put the phone down, please." Her words were like nails on a chalkboard. The way she said "we" as if this was something we could solve together made my stomach churn. The audacity, the pure nerve of it was almost impressive. Almost. I looked at her for a long moment, my chest rising and falling with the deep, angry breaths I was barely managing to control. She took a cautious step toward me, her arms still wrapped tightly around the sheet that covered her. "I'm so sorry, Jared. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen like this." "Didn't mean for it to happen like this?" I echoed, my voice rising. The calm I had been holding onto by a thread snapped, and the anger surged up like a wave, drowning any remnants of rational thought. "When exactly did you start not meaning to asterisk someone else, Emily? Was it when you took off your clothes, or was it when you climbed on top of him?" She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. The man she had been with, Kevin or Kyle or whatever his name was, stood in the corner, fully dressed now but silent. He was trying to edge his way toward the door, his face pale, eyes wide with the realization that he was part of something much bigger than an illicit affair. "What the hell are you still doing here?" I snapped at him, my voice sharp. "Get out." He hesitated for a moment, looking at Emily as if waiting for her to say something, to do something to protect him, to fix this situation. But she said nothing. She was too busy pleading with me, her tear-streaked face a grotesque caricature of the woman I once loved. The silence stretched until I barked, "Now!" That broke him. Without another word, he bolted toward the door, not even bothering to look back as he made his escape, slamming it shut behind him. I barely noticed. He was irrelevant. This was between me and her now. "Jared," she whispered, stepping closer. Please don't let people see this. Don't humiliate me like this. I know I made a mistake, but you don't have to do this. We can still fix this. Fix this. There it was again. The delusion that there was still something to fix, that somehow this could be swept under the rug if I just stopped recording, if I just deleted the video and pretended it never happened. My grip on the phone tightened. The comments were still pouring in, a relentless stream of judgment, ridicule, and advice. Don't listen to her, bro. Dude, end it now. She doesn't deserve another second of your time. Make her own up to it in front of everyone. Turn the camera on yourself, man. Show us your face. I glanced at the screen, my finger hovering over the end live button for a brief moment. But the rage, the betrayal, was too much. I wasn't done. Not yet. You think this is about humiliation? I asked, my voice low, my heart thudding in my chest. You humiliated me, Emily. You made me look like a fool while I trusted you, while I believed in us. This isn't about humiliation. This is about consequences. Her tears came harder now, and she fell to her knees in front of me, sobbing into the sheet she was clutching like it was her last defense. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Jared. Please, I'll do anything. Just please. Don't let people see me like this. I looked down at her, this woman who was begging me to save her reputation, and felt nothing but contempt. This was the woman I had shared my life with, the woman I had built dreams with, and here she was, reduced to nothing but a pitiful, crying mess, begging for mercy she didn't deserve. You want me to stop? I asked, my voice cold. Then tell them. Tell them what you did. She blinked up at me, her tear-filled eyes wide with disbelief. What? I crouched down in front of her, still holding the phone in one hand, the camera trained on her face. Tell them. Tell everyone watching how long you've been cheating on me. Tell them how long you've been lying to my face. Or I'll keep going. She shook her head, her breath hitching in her throat as she tried to form words. Jared, I didn't mean to. I was lonely, and it just happened. I laughed again, the sound bitter and hollow. Lonely? That's your excuse. She wiped at her tears, her chest heaving as she tried to explain, as she tried to salvage whatever remained. It was a mistake. It was just a few times. I swear, I didn't mean for it to go this far. A few times? I repeated, my voice sharp. How many times, Emily? She hesitated, her eyes darting to the phone, to the screen where thousands of people were waiting for her answer. 2,300 viewers. 3,146 viewers. She looked back at me, her voice barely a whisper. 5 times. I stood up, shaking my head in disbelief. 5 times. 5 times you chose someone else over me. 5 times you looked me in the eye and lied. She tried to stand, reaching out to me, but I stepped back out of her reach. Jared, please. It didn't mean anything. It was just... Just what? I snapped, cutting her off. A mistake? A moment of weakness? How many times did you plan to use that excuse before it stopped being a mistake and started being a choice? She couldn't answer. She just stood there, her hands trembling, her face crumpled in misery. The woman I had loved, the woman I had thought I knew, was gone. All that was left was this broken, desperate shell, pleading for forgiveness that I wasn't sure I had the capacity to give. I looked at her for a long moment, the anger and sadness swirling inside me in a chaotic storm. I wanted to scream, to break something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But instead, I just stood there, staring at her, wondering how the hell we had ended up here. The comments were relentless now, a flood of strangers' voices weighing in on my life, my choices. Bro, just walk away. She's not worth it, man. End the stream, move on, don't waste any more time on her. I knew they were right. Deep down, I knew this wasn't going to fix anything. It wasn't going to take away the betrayal, or the pain, or the loss of the life I thought I was going to have. But there was a part of me that still wanted her to suffer, that wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, not just in private, but publicly, for everyone to see. I could feel the phone in my hand, the power I held in that moment, and for the first time, I felt uncertain. Was this really what I wanted? Was I going to let this define me? I glanced down at her one last time, her tear-streaked face turned up to me, and felt the final crack in whatever bond we had left. I ended the live stream. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily stayed on the floor, staring up at me as if she couldn't comprehend what had just happened. I didn't move. I couldn't. The weight of everything that had just transpired hung in the air like a thick, oppressive fog. My phone buzzed in my hand, notifications flooding in from every social media platform imaginable, but I ignored them. I looked down at her, at the woman who had once been my entire world, and felt nothing. The anger that had been consuming me just moments ago had drained away, leaving behind an empty, hollow shell. I was done. Completely, utterly done. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, out of the house that we had shared, my steps slow and deliberate. Emily's sobs followed me down the hallway, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I might have stayed. And I knew I couldn't stay. Not anymore. The woman I had known, the life we had built, it was all gone. Destroyed. As I stepped outside, the cool evening air hit my face, sharp and bracing. I paused for a moment, taking in a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The world outside felt so different, so normal. Cars drove by on the street, people walked their dogs, children played in their yards. And here I was, my life in shambles, while the rest of the world carried on as if nothing had changed. I took another step forward, my mind racing, trying to figure out what the hell came next. I had no plan, no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. My phone buzzed again, and this time I glanced down. Messages from friends, family, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all pouring in. Some were sympathetic, others were angry, a few were confused. The live stream had reached more people than I had ever anticipated. It was everywhere. Part of me wanted to shut it all off, to throw the phone into the street and disappear. But I couldn't. I knew I had to face the fallout. There was no escaping it now. I walked down the street, each step feeling heavier than the last. My mind was a blur of thoughts, memories of the life I thought I was living colliding with the harsh reality of what had just happened. I thought about the nights we had spent together, the plans we had made, the future we had talked about. All of it felt like a cruel joke now. A lie. Somewhere along the way, I found myself sitting on a park bench. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the grass. I stared at the horizon, my mind blank for the first time in hours. There was no more anger, no more betrayal, just an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The sound of footsteps approaching pulled me out of my thoughts. I turned to see a man sitting down on the bench next to me. He looked about my age, maybe a few years older, with a tired expression on his face. "Hey," he said after a moment of silence. I nodded, unsure of what else to say. "I saw your live stream," he continued, his voice low, almost apologetic. "That was brutal, man." I didn't respond. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, especially not about what had just happened. He seemed to sense that, and after a moment, he spoke again, his tone softer. "I know how you feel. I've been there." I looked at him, surprised. "You've been through this?" He nodded. "Yeah, my wife cheated on me a few years ago. I found out in a similar way. Didn't live stream it, though," he added with a small, humorless chuckle. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a small connection to someone. A flicker of understanding. "What did you do?" "I left," he said simply. "It wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't stay. She tried to apologize, tried to make it right, but once that trust is broken, it's gone. You can't rebuild something like that." I stared at the ground, his words sinking in. I knew he was right. Deep down, I had known it the moment I saw her with that guy. There was no going back, no fixing this. Our relationship, our future, it was gone. So what now? I asked, my voice quiet. He shrugged. You move on. It's not easy. It takes time. But eventually, you'll find something better. Someone who won't do this to you. I nodded, his words a small comfort in the overwhelming sea of emotions I was drowning in. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but for the first time, I felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was something beyond this pain, beyond this betrayal. We sat in silence for a while longer, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting the park in a warm, golden light. And for the first time in hours, I allowed myself to breathe, to let go of the anger, the hurt, the need for revenge. I had survived the worst day of my life.